Welcome, Darklings, to Season 3 of the Reign of Blood podcast. I'm Ember, one of your hosts, here to introduce you to the shadowy depths of what hopes to be our most sinister season yet. This season, your unholy trinity of organizers and hosts, Miss Kitten, Radically Dark, and myself, have entirely way too much fun with the Summer of Stabs, our 80s horror-themed series that promises to be both educational and thrilling. Our aim is to explore the macabre, beauty that lies in the shadowed, or maybe not so shadowed, spaces of desire. Leading up to Reign of Blood Nightfall, our advanced Halloween extravaganza, we'll be discussing topics such as embodied and informed consent, risk mitigation, and other helpful tips, ensuring that every prick, slice, and puncture is as thought through as it is sensational for you. We'll also continue interviewing sharps enthusiasts from around the world to find out what makes the blood-loving heart tick. And maybe we'll talk Miss K into recording some more horror meditations for us. Join us as we explore the eerie, the edgy, and the exquisitely sharp. This is Reign of Blood, where the macabre meets the magnificent, and the only limit is your imagination, risk profile, and informed consent. Let the Summer of Stabs begin. But first, a content warning. This podcast is not suited for individuals who are not legal adults, are not interested in heavier BDSM practices, who are presently having severe mental or relationship health concerns, or who do not already understand basic BDSM practices regarding consent, ethics, risk mitigation, etc. Topics may include things like mental health issues, social issues, injustice, blood and sharks, of course, medical trauma, medical issues, trauma of various types, and more. Listener discretion is heavily advised.
Hey, amazing shots players. Welcome back. It's really nice to talk about blood and needly things and get excited for the next Reign of Blood that's coming up in November. We have our Halloween festival, and we're really excited to start bringing you some of our educators and some of our shops players from around the world. Today, I am really grateful for the amazing mistress that is in my dungeon virtually. Miz Tee, welcome to Reign of Blood, and thank you for your time today.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm thrilled to be here.
We're so excited, and we're always excited to talk about sharp things. But before we get into the nitty-gritty of the needles, let's just chat a little bit. Maybe you can tell myself and my listeners how you found this amazing world of BDSM and stopped being one of those vanilla muggles, and what your journeys look like a little bit.
I didn't begin like a lot of folks do. That wasn't something I had thought about as a kid, or, I enjoyed spanking or enjoyed being mean to friends. It wasn't anything like that. I worked with non-domestic animals for the first half of my career life. And I have what's called the danger gene, and that's the one that helped you like jumping out of airplanes that are perfectly good. When I had children, I decided that I could no longer risk my life playing with bears and wolves, and I had to find something a little more stable than that for me to dance the line on. And I found kink, I found SM, I found MS, and it fit my personality very well. I started with canes, then I went up to whips, and shortly after that, I found sharp, pokey things, and I absolutely fell in love with it. It mesmerizes me to watch how people drop so rapidly with needle play. I love how you can control their experience by either being abrupt and callous or being calm and soothing. I love the whole journey of it. I love painting in the blood. I love watching it trail down. On occasion with the right bottom, I love smearing their blood on their face. I just love the whole experience.
I think it's a common thread for sharps players to have one prick and they're hooked. I think that is something that I hear a lot of, and I have to tell you that it didn't take 10 needles that get me hooked either. I think after the first 5, I was in it to win it, and wouldn't swap it for anything in the world. Well, how long ago did you pick up needles, and what was sort of the first beginning stages of your needle journey?
I started needles about 15 years ago now, I think. And I was very blessed. I was taught by a professor of veterinary medicine. And he gave me so many tips and clues. And from there, I would talk to nurses that were in the scene. I would talk to the few doctors I could find that were in the scene, and just continued my education.
15 years is a lot of needles. Do you remember the first piece that you did as a top?
The first piece that I did, if I remember correctly, was a row down the upper surface of a female breast. And she had an experience. She cried, and it wasn't like loud sobbing tears. She just kind of sighed, and tears started rolling down her cheeks. And I said, "Are we good? Are we okay?" And she said yes, but that she had never experienced a release like that, and that it felt cathartic without having the immense pain that she usually would have to go through to get to a cathartic scene, with the added screams and trauma that can often go with a heavy cathartic scene. And that was it. I was in it. I jumped feet first in that pond and just kept swimming.
I love that. I think as a bottom, I'm a sadomasochist, so I top and I bottom a lot, especially for sharps. And I think as a bottom, I relate to what you're saying so much there. There is a way of having this release and being instantly present in a situation without having the intense trauma that goes with very heavy impact or a very heavy
Mhm.
scene. So I really liked listening to somebody else finding the same connection there, because I definitely, for me, it's been a way of not abusing my body as much, and being able to limit the damage, but being able to find that beautiful quiet headspace and that way of being present in the moment. And it's really lovely to listen to you talk about how you can calibrate the needles to give you a different scene. I've had the privilege of looking at some of your work, and your scenes are very creative. I have this vision. I'm never going to look at the Good Housekeeping book in the same way again after watching your video. For all my listeners, I think it is the best use of a Good Housekeeping book I've ever seen in my life. But yeah, it was just really lovely to see you incorporate different things into the session, and have different reactions, releasing different biochemistry, changing the needles up. I know that you've mentioned it, but they can be very cathartic, very gentle. It can be a very serene release, or it can be quite an a dramatic release, and it can also be playing with different types of body chemistry. So watching that scene with Good Housekeeping, which is in my head, you can see that, and I have a big smile on my face. I don't think I'd love the author of that book to know how you're using it. I really think that they need to know that their book is passing on a legacy in other realms. But yeah, like just being able to calibrate needles so carefully to find the release. So maybe you can tell me a little bit about about different ways that you're using sharps, and some of your favorites.
I play with sensualists and masochists, and they're different. If you if you play with a sensualist slowly and build them, give them plenty of time for warm up, they can take as much as many masochists can. Where a masochist, in my experience, tends to, they've already progressed through all those first stages. They have it in their head where they want to go. They know their road, and they jump in the ride with you to a heavier level quicker. With the sensualists, I breathe with them so that each needle is carefully placed. It's still, a clean thrust, but it's more slowly prepared so that they're not as anxious for it because I'm controlling their breathing. With a masochist, it's more like, just the typical, you throw in the needle and you watch the face and you watch the body, you watch the shoulders, the eyes. I like taking a needle, putting it in, putting some pressure on it, but then backing it out halfway and twisting it around as close to backwards as you can, depending on their skin and the elasticity in it, and then putting it back in. It's quite painful. It's a
I can
joy to watch
imagine
it.
that face. I have a big smile on my face thinking about it. A needle twist. We had Saded from the Netherlands to a needle twist class, and I think she is the god of needle twists because after seeing what she can do with that,
it's a lot of fun.
yeah, she definitely changed my life and the life of a lot of breasts around me for a good 6 weeks after that class. I definitely had fun with her needle twists. And I really like the way that you're talking about calibrating the scene for a sensualist. And I think that a lot of people have this image of needles being a really heavy kink. And I think what you're saying is that it can be calibrated to be anyone's cup of tea if it's done with the right intent. So what I'm hearing a lot from what you're saying is you're talking about the intent that is going into the scene, and you've obviously thought about that before you started the play.
I do that when I'm having the pre-play talk. It's, for me, it's not as much a negotiation conversation as it is a casual conversation between friends. What's life been like lately? Do you need a heavy release? Do you just want to float away? Do you want to laugh? Do you want it to be serious? What are you needing? And we'll see if my mood is good for matching that today. And if not, then we can find something else to do or make a date for another day. But I generally just do very casual conversations unless it's a tastings. And I do lots of needle tastings. One of my, I wouldn't call it a fetish, but it's a strong joy, is to help people get over needle phobias.
It's insane to see how many needle phobias are out there and how, again, for me, it comes down to intent. I had a trip to the dentist recently, and I am a pretty heavy, hardcore sadomasochist on a good day. And going to the dentist, I'm literally in tears before I've even walked in the office. And it's insane because the guy's never going to hurt me half as much as I hurt myself or ask other people to hurt me. But yet, just the intent of the situation, for me, it feels completely unconsensual. It feels like I am compelled to do whatever he tells me at that moment because I don't really have a choice. My only choice is to get through the appointment. So I think it's a bit of an unconsensual thing for me, but it's just so interesting that by changing the intent for the situation, I can change the outcome. So this time I was really good about saying this is something that I wanted to do, and it was something that I was doing because I was looking after myself. So try to convince myself in the waiting room that this was about self-care, and this really I was doing it because I mattered to myself, and not punishing the poor oak for his degree and his choice of profession and hating him from the moment I sat my ass down in the chair. But there are a lot of people out there. Is there something that you can, any top tips for advising needle phobics like myself at the dentist on how to deal with situations like that?
my own girl Sparkette will send me a message right before she goes in, and she says, "I'm thinking about you and how much joy you would get out of what's going to happen to me." And that that gives her a different kind of boost and a different kind of energy going into it. So I would say just consider the possibility of thinking about a sadist that you enjoy having a good time with, and or maybe even telling them that you're thinking about them while you're going to have this experience, and it might change your brain framework on how you look at the visit. It might change it enough to take away some of the stress and fear of it.
I love that. That's such a good plan. I agree, changing the intent, and I think intent is everything. So I'm not promising that I'm going to be any better at my next dental appointment. I think at my age it's now inbred. The poor guy, he shouldn't have to be punished by seeing me. Like, I really don't know what he has done in his life to deserve a patient like me. But I was slightly better. I was slightly improved this time. But I love that there is a way to approach a fear that is a global fear. I think the statistics on this are a little bit insane. Like, I think it's like 70% of people have a needle phobia. 30% of people have such a bad needle phobia that they actually refuse medical treatment and don't ever go to the doctor.
Yes.
Which is quite insane, considering, most of us are happy to sit down and have 100 needles in our legs on a Tuesday afternoon.
Right.
Yeah, and
um
then
I
sorry.
No, it's just I see that in everyday life, and people have tremendous fears of things that were probably just presented badly when they were small, when they were young. If you don't tell your children that some experience is going to be painful, but you need to get through it, and then you're going to go and do something fun after, if you just don't prepare them, I think that sets these phobias in, and they're very difficult to get waylaid later on in life. Sometimes it never happens, and certainly not for people who don't find either hypnosis or BDSM.
So interesting. I think I'm gonna blame my mum on this one. My dentist name that she chose when I was a child was called Dr. Hammer. He was a
Oh my
German
gosh.
guy. And he also never did anything wrong. The poor oak was an absolute sweetheart. But I just think the mental image of going to see somebody named Dr. Hammer was just so terrifying that I built it up in my head until he was a vicious monster, and then never got
Yes.
never got past that. So yeah, definitely gonna follow some of your advice about being better. When people are starting out with you with needles, you say you do quite a lot of tastings. What are some important things that you have a chat with them for first timers? And are there any tips that you have that you can offer the listeners about a first time with needles?
Well, it depends on if it's a phobic person or just somebody curious. They're radically different. Which one would you like?
I think both, if possible. But let's start with the normal, hasn't had a Dr. Hammer in their life before type person.
Okay, so they're a little bit afraid and not sure what's going on. If the fear is huge, I will put a needle in the wrapper close to them. I don't even touch them. I just have a conversation. I let them know it's there. It's not going to move. That when they're ready, they can take the package and move it up to their leg. And, a little while later, after just casually talking about some other things and throwing in a needle comment once in a while, they'll get up the courage to put it on their leg, and we'll progress from there to opening it and having it laying on their skin. And then I'll generally start breathing with them and getting them to match my breaths with me. And what I'll do is I tend to drop my voice, and I'll use my hand and my voice, and I'll lift my hand for the breathe in, and I'll drop my hand for the breathe out. And it goes something like this: breathe in, breathe out, breathe in, breathe out, breathe in and push it all the way out. Breathe in and hold it. Now push it out. And when they're pushing it out, I insert the needle, and they usually don't even feel it. By that time, they're mesmerized by the lowered voice, they're locked eyes with me, and they sink right in. And usually they're shocked that it's happened. Oh my God, I did that. Oh my, I did that. And then they're thrilled with themselves. They're very proud.
I love that. I think there's a lot about breathing, and I also think there's a lot about how your skin reacts to stress. So the skin as a canvas. I know that if you are injecting animals that are full of fear, then it can be really hard to put an injection into the skin and to get the needle in. So if you translate that into a human situation, the more relaxed the person is, the more relaxed the skin is,
Yes.
and the much easier the situation is for everybody concerned. And I also think energy travels. So I know when I started off being a needle top, it was something that I had to learn not to take on other people's anxiety in the situation. So not to allow myself to be absorbed by other people's nervous energy, and to just keep I call it bulldog energy 1, because I have a Frenchie who has this amazing ability to be super frigging relaxed about everything, and she just brings this energy that's like a level 1, and she's so calm and she loves everybody and she's just chilled. But she can also have bulldog energy 10, which is psychotic, and we really want to avoid that, and that doesn't chill out anybody. The whole room is bouncing after 5 minutes of bulldog energy 10. So it took me a while as a top to learn to really just chillax and not absorb the energy that was around me, but rather wait until the person that was with me had moved into my energy space and was absorbing my energy. And I think that needles have been really interesting for me. So it's interesting to hear you say what you're saying, because I think that's what you're doing. You're creating an energy by the breathing, and you're putting them into your space. And by doing that, you're giving them a chance to just relax. And then the skin is easier to pierce, and the skin is softer, and the needles do go in better, and the whole experience is generally not a Dr. Hammer experience.
I tend to look at that as skin compliance. It when you stroke someone gently, their skin does relax more. When you try to envelop them in calm, warm energy, they can accept a lot more than many people can when they're really frightened. And this is especially true with anything that pierces the skin. I like pokey things. It's not just needles. I like porcupine quills. I like cactus tines. I like all kinds of things. And learning how to help the other person sink into their experience, no matter what level they want it on, is always helpful.
I'm picking up some things you mentioned there that I haven't heard used as sharps before. Some cactus things. Tell me some more about this cactus thing. This sounds like the sadist in me is already excited by what you're saying.
Cactus tines are, it's one that you do have to poke somebody a couple times with gently to make sure they don't have any allergies. But I take mine from very clean plants that I grow, and I wash them gently with dishwashing soap water. And after drying for several days, I'll put them through a UV light bath, and then put them in like a breath mint tin so that they're ready to use. And I put them in a pair of like surgical forceps, the ones that have a broader grip. It's usually like for piercing, so that there's a circle inside the grip of the clamp, so that it holds more of the tine, so the tine doesn't want to break or bend as easy. And just repeated stabs with it very rapidly gives me great ornery pleasure to do to people.
love
because there's
that.
lots of squealing with that.
I can imagine. I think it appeals to a whole bunch of my kinky side. Like I just love medical plays. So any reason to have a pair of forceps in my hand is like the best day ever. I even use forceps to take out needles sometimes just because I can. Just because they're
Yes.
there and I have a million pairs of them and I love to use them and I love to play with them. So finding a way to use a forceps to stab somebody is delightful. And I'm feeling your joy straight across the ocean. Definitely, definitely gonna
I
give
love it.
Definitely gonna give that a try. I love that. We don't get the porcupine calls we get here. Our African porcupines don't have the little quill, the little hook on the end of it. So we get the very long African porcupine calls, which are great, but they don't stay in. So
Yes.
so we haven't had as much experience with the porcupine quills, but we have a lot we have a lot of African cactuses. So I think I'm gonna start investigating that and let you know how it goes because that sounds
Oh,
super
I'd
fun.
love that. I want to hear about your experience with it. I find it great fun.
Uh, yeah, and I have a
Just
unique
try to look for tines that have not been broken off at the end by something brushing against it or breaking them. Just find good healthy tines and gently use your forceps and gently pluck it off right at the pad of the cactus so that you have the entire length of it. And usually there'll be like little bitty fuzzy tines at the bottom showing you that you've got the entire tine out. And yeah, go for it.
amazing.
Cause that pain.
I'm so excited. CBT is like one of my biggest passions, and cactus twines and CBT just go. They lend to such a good combination.
Oh, I
I'm
love the idea.
I'm definitely committed. I'm committed to the process. Can you leave them in for a little bit, or do you take them out straight away?
You can leave them in for a little bit. They become more and more irritating.
Damn, gee, that sounds terrible.
It's
What?
just shucky darn that just awful.
The typical sadist statement. It's not hurting me at all. What's wrong? I can't understand why you're in pain currently.
Stop wiggling. I'm having fun.
Yeah, this is not hurting me at all. I'm not sure why you're complaining about these things. I don't feel a thing. Yeah, I love that. I really liked your needle bondage. You had some really interesting ideas. Do you want to share a little bit about that journey with the listeners and tell us a little bit about some very cool things that you can do with needles and a piece of string?
I was doing a needle bondage intensive that I filmed, and one of the things that we were doing is you put the person, like, for example, you would put a needle in the chest and then one in the arm, and you bind them to each other with a string, but then you put weight on the fingers, or in this case, I used Betty Crocker cookbook because it was a big, heavy book and it was handy. So there's the pressure, and the hand was palm up flat, and the arm was bound towards the body with the needles. And so there was all this pressure to drop the hand, which pulled on the string, which put pressure on the needles. And that was just lovely. I liked that. And then doing a human caterpillar where you use twine to, you put needles in the same spacing up and down the bodies of your bottoms. You have them standing close together, and then you bind each of those together with the twine and make them move around the room. And if you're the helpful type like me, and you want them to be able to have giggles and stuff like that, well, you slap them around a little bit with slappy toys for, because the noise is always good. And then somebody tries to jump a little bit, and so then the line starts squealing and giggling, and it's just great fun.
I love that. The one thing that struck me about your videos was the amount of fun that all of your players seemed to have, and they all seemed really happy to be there and really excited about what was going to happen. And it was lovely to see that, and lovely to see the connection that you had with even with your brat, and the control you had over the brat. I was impressed by that. Um, but really just lovely to see a bunch of people having a great time. You're involved in kink in other ways as well, though, and you are involved. We don't have a leather community, but you're involved in your leather community. Do you want to tell me a bit about that?
I am. I do tastings events wherever I can. I do DMing, which is dungeon monitoring for parties when I'm asked to. I'm a member of the Portland Leather Alliance, which is the organization, nonprofit, that puts on our biggest event yearly called KinkFest. It's the last year the dungeon was increased in size, so it was called the largest dungeon in the world. And it's a massive event that takes place Easter weekend here. And I'm in co-chair of education, and we have a new venue that will be opening before this comes out. So I'm very pleased to be part of that. I'm also active in presenting at different events, whether they're leather or just kink. Most of our events have some leather aspect to them. We have a large leather community here on the west coast of the US.
I spoke to just Rob a little bit back, and he was telling me about the all the leather emblems that have been put together to make a quilt.
Yes.
We don't have any of that history in kink. It's really beautiful to see a legacy like that and passed on. And I think it's a little bit of people put a lot of time and effort into kink, so it's really lovely to see them remembered like that, and also to see the sort of newer generation. I'm not sure how new just Rob is. I think he's just as old as I am, to be honest. But it's lovely to see a newer generation getting involved and taking over and wanting to preserve that, because I think that legacy is so incredibly special. We don't have much of it, so to see somebody else celebrating it and preserving it, I just found really beautiful. And the whole idea of the leather community promoting the values that are promoted, I think is really special at kink, and I think it gives somebody a home, and it gives somebody a purpose, and it really just promotes such a lovely community vibe in the local communities. So yeah, so really fascinated by it. I'm currently the quilt stalker because I think I've done more research on the leather quilt than most Americans, because I just think it's fantastic. I just think it's so beautiful that people have a memory and have a legacy of things like that.
It is fantastic. We have at this juncture of our growth in kink, we have two fairly distinct teams, I guess I'd say. One is no hierarchy. This is just what I do for fun. I like to hit people, or I like to get smacked, or I like poking people and I like to be poked, with no structure to it. And then we have the leather contingent, which is really based on having a set of values: love, honor, integrity, respect, hierarchy for elders and experienced players, um, and that sense of tight bond with like family groups. And these are two very different, like the dichotomy between them it can be astonishing when you look at it from a social aspect. But I tend to be more leather. I tend to follow old values, and that works for me. I have a leather family. We do things together in events, and in the privacy of our homes, we have get-togethers and enjoy private time together, as well as going out in public and playing there too. But it's not that I just play with family, because that's not accurate. Most of my play partners aren't in my family. I'm blessed to have a large number of willing victims who will fall daintily when it comes to the opportunity to play. And I understand that I've worked hard to get that, but it's also a real blessing to have, because it just takes one bad scene to kind of ruin your reputation for quite a while over here.
Yeah, I think if there's anything to scare you off kink, it's reading anything about a consent violation on Fate Life, and anything about your American cancel culture. Totally terrifying as a South African. And totally, it took me about 5 years not to be scared to make a mistake and to understand
Yes.
that part of consent was accountability, and that was what we were actually looking for, not just total fear of being cancelled. So it is definitely a different structure to what we deal with here. But I love what you said about the privilege of playing with you call them victims. I call mine blood
Yes.
bags. I call mine blood bags or canvases. My more sensualist friends I call canvases, and my sort of more masochist friends we call blood bags. So I also
There you go.
have a little bit of a, but it is such a privilege, and I think that's the one thing Sharps has really given me, is this whole this whole world into intimate friendships that I never really expected to have and never expected to appreciate so much. And I have many hours of incredible intimacy that and it's not even a sexual thing, it's just an honest sharing of intention, and I've found that really special, and that's something at Sharps that I wouldn't swap for anything in the world. I think I'd almost give up sex to keep the Sharps, but
I'm a sexual sadist. If I hurt someone just right, I'll orgasm, but it has to be just right. And my bottoms are aware of that. But I don't have sex with my bottoms. I'm what's known here as a stone top, which means I do the touching. No one touches me sexually. But I'm also a very tactile person, and I like lots of hugs and loves and all of that. I just don't mix sex as I see it into my kink.
yeah, I think my play partners I'm very monogamous. So I think my play partners and my partner have always been different. So for me, there's never been a crossover of that type of play. So I'm not sure if there would be a sexual element for me, because I've never sort of really allowed it to go to that point. But I do love the fact that you can orgasm from the right form of pain. I think that's pretty cool, and I can imagine that happening in my head too. So I just have never allowed myself to go down that route to that level. My partner is a latex pony, and pain is not for the pony.
Yes.
I unintentionally, in the first sort of 3 months of us dating, managed to catch his piece of his skin on his penis in a zip tie, and it wasn't intentional on any level. And 5 years later, it's still the first story he tells everybody. And the forgiveness,
Oh no.
the forgiveness has not happened yet. And it's the only form of pain I've ever inflicted on him. It's totally unintentional, but he's never forgotten it. So, so pain is definitely not part of my a part of my relationship status at all. So interesting to hear different ideas, and really interesting to hear your share. Thank you. I've really loved chatting
You're
to
very
you,
welcome.
and I'm so excited to have you join us and to be on board with us for Rain of Blood. We're very excited to bring Halloween to everybody's living rooms in some bloody way at the end of October, and very excited to have you on board with us.
Thank you so much. It's my sincere honor to be here. I really, really enjoyed the first one that you did, and look forward to seeing many more.
I want to just remind all our listeners that we have a 2-day festival at the end of October, 1st and 2nd of November. We're hoping to bring you some 301 demos and classes, some really bloody, gory Halloween type stuff. Everything from blood angels to some suspensions to some flesh corsets. I also have the Doyen back with an extreme version of Stabby Twister. So dropping some little hints so that you guys can start getting excited. Tickets should go on sale by the time this podcast comes out, so get your tickets. If you're listening to this, they should still be on the early bird special. And we're excited to have you back with us. If you are looking to present, send us an application. If you need a scholarship, we always offer scholarships. We believe this type of education should be for everybody. You don't need to give us a reason, you just need to send us a message. And otherwise, we're asking you to stay sharp and have a bloody good time. And from my dungeon in a very wet and rainy Cape Town, lots of love and kitten kisses.